Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today. We have Illana Raia here with us from Manhattan. Illana, thanks for being here. We're thrilled to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we're excited to have you, and she's in here ready to go. She's had a long trip, so she's ready to go. So let me give our audience a little bit of background on you so they have a sense as to why we're speaking. So Illana was corporate lawyer and turned entrepreneur and is doing some incredible work. So I want to share a little bit. Her personal experiences as a mother has helped her realize what her true calling is. And so I don't want to give too much away because I want her to be able to share with you this story. But she went out on her own and has founded this company called Etre. And she has worked with tens of thousands of girls to sit in the boardroom chairs, raise their hands in the United Nations council chambers, stand on the Spotify stages, and ring NASDAQ bells. This has garnered the likes of nationally recognized icons such as Gloria Steinem, Tyra Banks, Lily Ledbetter. So some pretty heavy hitters. And it sounds like you're having an incredible impact with empowering young women, helping them find that confidence early in their lives. So Illana, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much again for having me. I'm thrilled. And it's been a joy start to finish. Every one of those experiences that you named just lights me up when I hear it again.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, it feels good when you're doing something that's highly purposeful, right? And so let's jump in. Let's talk about corporate law, what took you down that path, and then where was that significant moment you knew, I've got so much more to offer in the world?
It's a great question. Thank you. The easy part of that answer is I always wanted to be a lawyer. From day one, my grandmother was actually a lawyer.
Amazing.
She graduated law school in 1936 in Brooklyn. She was one of maybe two women in her class. And from the time I was tiny, I just wanted to be like her. I wanted to walk into rooms and I would watch her speak publicly or go to court. And I just knew that I wanted to do that. So I went straight from college to law school to a big law firm in New York and never looked back and never thought I could be happier doing anything else. So I always think that's funny to think you may think that your path is straight and direct and A to B, and it could take you in an entirely different direction and you could be just as happy or happier.
Yeah. A surprise, right?
and such a happy surprise. I had tremendous mentors in law school and at the law firm. Many, not all of them, but many of them women. So I knew the impact of female mentorship and I really benefited from it, especially at a time where nothing was by Zoom. You know, I'll date myself, but there were not cell phones and texts going back and forth. You were in the room. So to have these mentors was truly impactful. And I started to think about how I could extend that mentorship to other people, really democratize access to amazing mentors for younger girls. But it wasn't, you're right when you say that my experiences as a mom, it wasn't until I saw my daughter trying to raise her hand or thinking about those questions that I really thought we need to build something.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it sounds like you had a great role model in your grandmother, right? And even when you joined the law firm, you had role models. You could see yourself being in these roles. And so let's talk about Etre. Like how did this happen? You know, how did you come up with a name, number one? And then how did you attract all these young women?
Absolutely. So the name Etre in French means to be. And I fundamentally loved the idea of asking girls who they wanted to be. I was stunned as a lawyer to discover I could trademark the verb. That was a really happy day. I didn't think I could trademark a French verb. But I like the idea of asking girls often and early who they wanted to be. And the important distinction there is not what they wanted to be. I'm not asking them to pick a career path or an industry or a company they think is really cool. We go to those places. But all of the verticals on our website talk about be smart, and it's a whole bunch of STEM companies, or be strong, and it's all about sports, or be wise, where the S is the dollar sign, and it's about financial literacy. So asking them who they wanted to be, and it was really springboarded by my daughter, who didn't really see what I was doing every day in mergers and acquisitions, didn't really connect my very accomplished friends with their jobs. And I just felt the need to put more female role models in front of her when she was in middle school. So I took her to see my friends in action at work. And the minute I did, as I said, I started thinking other girls should be doing this. Yeah. And so I reached out to some friends and said, would their daughters, if I could get us into a particular company, Spotify was the first one we went to, would they want to go? And they did. And I built a website, and I knew nothing about coding or building websites or Facebook marketing or anything like that. I took classes at General Assembly downtown in New York. But I did realize that two things were happening. Girls really wanted to go into these companies where they understood the product and they were always on the platform, Google, YouTube, or they were curious about the big things, like you said, the NASDAQ bell, the floor of the stock exchange, the UN. And they didn't just want to see it on a video. Yeah. They wanted to stand in the room. They wanted to look eye to eye with the women. And then on the flip side, the companies really wanted it. They wanted to save seats for girls.
Yeah, I love that. And that's, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about my own daughter who is she's in that pivotal moment right now where she's like, Mom, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know who I want to be. Mm-hmm. And when they have these experiences, and I see this with her because I take her to all my events and right. And I hear her saying things, and she has a very acute business acumen already, but that's not been on her radar. Right. And I'm like, these are things that are natural for you. Like, so it's when you put them in these experiences, it brings it to life.
Yes.
Right.
It does. And they feel seen and heard.
Yeah.
They will remember what it was like to stand in the boardroom at Morgan Stanley and ask a question about equal pay or inclusion and get a really great, candid, expansive answer. That may be a company they want to go for an internship someday because they felt valued and they felt seen. They may not know that you can be a lawyer or an accountant or anything else at Paramount, but because they met those women, they realize there are a myriad of jobs you can have under the umbrella of a company. And this is all eye-opening for them. So it's laying groundwork for them to sort of become aligned, or as you said, see themselves in these women. And they see women running the show. We only meet women. And it's a really interesting part of the platform.
Oh, I love that. And so what age group are you targeting? Like where are you finding these young women? Because I hear this even from clients that I coach right now, right? And they're saying, I'm not seeing myself in that C-suite. And then it becomes, how do you become the role model then for everybody else? So you become the person that's in the C-suite.
Yep. So we start as early as middle school. I built it for middle school originally. And the data really bore that out. We've done a tremendous amount of research in this area because you want to know that what you're seeing, that confidence boost that you see in the boardroom, isn't just anecdotal, but is there some math behind this? So we've done 2 national surveys showing that between the ages of 13 and 18, that's when girls' confidence can drop by 20%. You know, the girls who say they feel smart during those ages can drop by 50%. Yeah. So I built it for middle school at the time. Having said that, we do trend a little bit younger sometimes. Our youngest board member right now is 10.
Oh, wow.
Who did a TED Ed talk with us last year. She's tremendous. So it can be earlier than middle school. But the really fascinating part now is because Etre is 8, we're growing with the girls. Okay. So we have girls now in high school or in college who were with us when they were in middle school and now are reaching back out to that woman at the stock exchange, that woman we met, you know, at Google to see about next steps. And that mentorship loop seems to be closing. So we do stretch from age 10 to 25, I say, because even young professionals want to be in the room if we're going to sit down with Gloria Steinem or we're going to meet with Tyra Banks or Zoom with an astronaut. It's valuable at all of these different levels.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And of course, as you're saying this, I'm thinking of my own kids, right? Because I'm constantly, like, my daughter, she's in university, right? First year university. And there was a person who came in and was speaking to her class, similar to what you're describing. She was like, Mom, he was so fascinating and he's doing this in his job. And so first thing I said to her was, did you connect with him on LinkedIn?
Yes.
And she went, no, there's 1,500 kids in my class. I go, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Connect with him and let him know what resonated with you.
Oh, such
right?
I love that you're telling her this. And social media, this really is the place where social media can be used for good.
Yeah.
For all of the studies that we're seeing, and valid, so many of them, about the detrimental aspects of social, especially young, for a lot of girls, if they see an Olympic athlete and they have a question about her training, they can DM her on Instagram, and you'd be stunned at how many of these athletes will answer back.
Yeah.
You're not saying, can you meet with me or will you mentor me for my entire athletic career? You're saying, I have a question about how you stayed motivated during COVID. Would you answer it? And they are. And so at those earlier ages, places like Insta with a parent or a very cool aunt or someone looking over their shoulder, definitely. And then as they get older, the minute they're 16 or older, LinkedIn is just one of my favorite platforms.
Me too.
Because of that, because you can message someone and you can say, this TED Talk that I saw struck me. When I saw you speak at my school, and that comment really resonated with me, and I had a follow-up question. Now you're staying in touch.
Yeah,
and it's not a mentorship, but it is a mentor moment.
Yes.
And those really matter. So I love that advice you're giving your daughter.
Well, it's huge. I mean, I like you, LinkedIn is my favorite. I love it. And, I have my connections are very broad, but it's a great way for you to start engaging, just as you said, right? And it doesn't have to be taking up lots of time, because that's one of the things I hear the kids say, well, I don't want to bother them. And it's like, do you know how flattering it is? You just heard him speak about X, Y, Z, right? And you being able to say, hey, I really love the conversation. Like this really resonated with me. I think that person would love to hear that.
Yes. And if you're a student listening to this, or you have a student in your orbit and you want to pass this on, say that you're a student in that subject line. Tell the person right up front, high school junior, college freshman, heard you speak and have a question. Tell the person who you are, because the fact that you are next gen and fascinated by their job gets their attention straight off the bat.
Exactly.
It would get my attention.
Exactly. Me too. Exactly. So I love that, because I didn't coach her on that. And so I love that. That's really awesome. That way they know where it's come from. So how are you expanding or scaling? Like, because I mean, you're based out of New York, but how do you get across North America in doing this?
So girl, you asked earlier, and it relates to this question, how girls are finding us. Certainly social media is a big way. Okay. They DM us, they send in questions. We love featuring really interesting teens and young women who are doing amazing things. So if you are starting a nonprofit, you're writing a book, you're bringing a product to market, you know someone that we should spotlight. Every time we do that, our audience grows a little bit. Companies who are already following us see that girl. Literary agencies who are following us see that new book. So definitely social media on both sides of the equation, on the sides of the girls and on the side of those companies who can then springboard them or open the boardroom door. We have clubs in a bunch of different schools and in 6 different countries.
Oh,
so Club Etre is really like just a pop-up after-school club. And it's great for 2 reasons. It's great because you bring something new to your campus. Yeah. And that's hard to do. There are so many clubs and everyone's so busy that if you can bring something fresh, if you can bring something and say, we're going to Zoom with Women on Wall Street this term. And then next term, we're going to Zoom with athletes or Paralympians or whatever your particular group is interested in, you can start a club at your school. And the schools really like it because you're bringing interesting and dynamic women to their campus, whether live or virtual. We do have a TED Ed license, and we are actually about to have our first live TED event. We've done 3 seasons of virtual, which we started during COVID. Okay. But on October 20th in New York, there'll be a live TED Ed event with girls from 7 countries.
Oh my goodness.
Speaking about all of these amazing topics mentored by rock star women. We have our first Nobel laureate mentoring a girl this year.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Congratulations. Fabulous.
Girl. It's her topic. I had very little to do with it. But I will add the girl's 12. And she had a question about DNA, and Jen Doudna, who won the Nobel in chemistry, is mentoring her. So
I have goosebumps when you just said that.
That's really exciting. And these are all ways that we scale. Yeah. Because then that next girl that watches that TED Ed talk says, she's 12 and she reached out to that person, with Etre's help and had those mentor moments. Maybe I want to do a talk. Maybe I feel passionately about something and I actually want to raise my voice and get on stage. And that all of these authentic experiential moments are really what make us grow. And it's moments like this.
Yeah.
It's every time we talk about it and another woman says, oh, you know who you should meet? I know someone at this amazing company. You should reach out. This is how we're scaling. It's happening really fast, though. I won't lie. It's really fast.
Well, it sounds like it. And it gives the young girls something to grasp onto, right? And I keep going back to this, being able to see someone like you, right? And then you go, oh, I can do that.
Yes.
And it's fascinating, right? And I just, my head's spinning right now, because one of the things that, comes up often is the whole mentorship piece, right? And I love how you're talking about these micro moments, right? Or mentor moments, because so many times, like I'll have people reach out and they'll say, oh, Vicki, will you become my mentor? I don't know them. I don't know anything about them, right? And as you pointed out earlier, our schedules are packed, right? But what you just shared is, to me, that is pivotal. Mentor moments, it doesn't have to be a long engagement. It's that one conversation, that one text, right? That one correspondence has the potential to change the trajectory of your life.
Yeah. And then you can always say, if the person answers and they've given you a valuable insight or shared a memory that you know is going to stick with you, it's okay to say, would you mind if I reach back out in 6 months?
Yeah, exactly.
Circle back. You're not asking for anything. You simply want to stay in contact, and you can share big things that are happening to you. If someone has been helpful to you, when you get into college, share that. If you've written a paper you think they would like, send it. It's okay. No harm, no foul, but staying in touch like that, building up those mentor moments, it could just be two. It could morph into something else. But everybody likes to be able to be helpful. And now you're providing a really easy way and a really light, specific ask. And it makes it easier for that mentor to lend a hand.
Yeah, I love that. That's so awesome. The other thing that was spinning in my head is, when we were talking about what you see, right? And having those role models. And so I did an exercise with my kids, it would have been 2 years ago. And they're older, right? One just graduated university. And so I asked thank you. It was a long road to hoe, but he got there and he's doing good now. But I asked the kids, because I was doing an assignment when I went back to university, and we had to use 8 nouns to describe ourselves. And so I thought, for an interesting conversation, conversation, I asked my kids, like, even if you picked one noun, how would you describe me? And it was fascinating.
What did they say?
Well, my son goes, what do you mean? You're just mom. And I went, oh, really? And then when I asked my daughter, she goes, oh, mom, no, you're like a leader. You help so many women and you're always coaching and supporting women. And, she went on. And it was just so fascinating, the perspective from the two, right? And so you're exposing these young women to people that typically would be out of reach, right? But showing them that they're human, just like they are, right? And I think that's a really important aspect of it, is being able to see, they put their pants on the same way you do.
And what they see is so interesting. You can have a huge panel. We went to NBC and there was this tremendous panel of women across all of these different areas. And the girls were on their feet asking questions and so excited. And then on the bus ride home, I have an ear out, and one of the girls who was younger was remarking that the person who came in to give coffee to the main speaker was a guy. And this stayed with her. As much as what that woman was saying, she was completely aware of the fact that a junior person on the team was male and bringing the coffee. And that, blew her mind. And
that's awesome.
You would never think that, but they're picking up on all of these things.
Yeah.
They're noticing everything. They're noticing the way the women interact with each other, how seriously they take the girls' questions. They really do see it all. And it is a difference when you're putting someone in the room.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's so great. So when you think about some of the conversations that take place, like what are some of the commonalities, across multi countries even, what are some of the commonalities you hear from these young women?
It's surprising. And it's something I didn't really see until COVID, when we suddenly couldn't go into companies live and everything pivoted to Zoom. We had girls in other countries getting up at all hours to join our Zooms. And that is really where I saw the girl in Jerusalem might have exactly the same question as the girl in Georgia, where what they really want to know is, how did you get that first job? Did you really need to write a cover letter? Were you nervous the first time you spoke up in a meeting? These questions are really similar. How do you negotiate your first salary? And if you can't, how do you then figure out a raise? Did you have student debt? Do you talk about equal pay? Do you talk about what if you wanted to switch directions? These questions are universal, and they start so much earlier than you think, because it's not specific to the role. The jobs that these girls will ultimately have probably haven't been invented yet.
Yeah.
In all likelihood, those jobs don't even exist. But the soft skills, how did you first approach the job you really wanted? Is this your dream job? If it's not, what is? Those are evergreen. And girls all over the world are asking them so much earlier than I would have thought.
Wow. I love that. And I think that's so fascinating, right? Because that breaks down a lot of barriers, right? When you see the commonality across many countries, right? The voices are very similar. And I express that to a lot of my clients as well, that these are challenges, let's say, or fears that we have, no matter what industry you're in, right? It's very common that we feel X, right? And so identifying that at a young age becomes really important, because you build that confidence to overcome that much quicker.
Yes. And when they hear someone else ask the question, it also teaches them, and it's a universal thing, ask the question that's in your mind. Don't wait for the next person in the classroom or the locker room or the boardroom to ask that question. If you're thinking it, odds are so good somebody else is. So go ahead and ask. When they hear each other asking in the room or the Zoom, I think it sparks them to do it the next time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really important as well, because the other thing is too, you don't want to leave that room and not ask the question, because then you have regrets, right? Yes. And it's like, Lauren, I wish I'd asked them this. So do it, like, because you're right, 100% guaranteed, probably 50% of the room or call is sitting there going, I really want to know this, but I'm just not comfortable asking it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's that little push. Yep. So, what do you think some of the risks are if we don't put attention to these young girls? Like you're doing some new innovative things that are helping young women really get out there. But what if we're not doing it? What are the risks in the workplace?
There are a couple of risks, and they go from small to big. The small risk is that the girl who's nervous to raise her hand in class doesn't meet that engineer from NASA who says, oh, I was really nervous to raise my hand too. And then I got over it in the 7th grade, just like you are now. And now I work at NASA. Like, those moments go away. And so at the smallest level, that instinct to raise your hand and not lower your standards, we need to make sure that girls are raising their hands. That's a confidence issue. And that can very quickly morph into a compensation issue. Sure. We don't want a confidence gap that we know exists for girls at these ages to stay and grow and become a compensation gap later. Yeah. And so I think it is really important to democratize access to mentors to make sure that every girl in every neighborhood, in every school, has a clear path to the women that she wants to meet. And you don't have to be someone with that mom network like I started with, where I knew women to introduce my daughter. That's not what I want. I want girls from everywhere to be able to do that. And so I think that's a big risk if we don't make sure that those doors are really open and those pathways are paved, and that girls can walk in, and that smart companies are saving seats for girls. Yeah. Because we're not going to have more women in the boardroom, which everybody wants and everyone realizes helps that bottom line, unless we save seats for girls. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I would say the other risk to that, and I'm just thinking, older as they are navigating these complexities, and we have a little bit of this happening right now where women are walking away from some of those senior leadership roles. And so having that voice becomes really important. Yes. And it's not about, being someone you're not. It is really about being authentic to who you are and being able to express it. So the younger you learn it, the better. And it's good for everyone. That diversity of thought, that diversity of viewpoint is good for everyone, the men and the women at every company. The allies, the champions, everyone else around us who are helping us navigate our careers and grow and lead, that diversity and that inclusion is fundamental.
Yeah.
We can't do it without it.
Yeah, I agree. And it changes. It changes some of these traditional systems that we've had in place, because we tend to look at things differently, more holistically. And I know I'm kind of blanket statement here, but there is a very different approach when you have women, not just one, but when you have women sitting at the table or changing the table, right? Yeah, I love that. So, some people, I get a lot of this backlash, right? Because I am all about women in leadership empowered. But some people push back and say, well, what about our boys? Our boys have been sort of pushed to the side now. And I'm just curious, like, what are you hearing? What are your thoughts on that? Like, I know for my household, I have one of each.
Yep,
and
I do too.
Right? So we're doing the same thing with both of them and pushing them to use their voices and meet people and make those connections. So what are your thoughts on that?
So it's a very valid question, and I get it very often. Where is Etre Guys? Why are we only doing this for girls right now? And I do not hate the idea of Etre Guys. I don't. I love the idea. We don't have the bandwidth to do it right now. But in truth, it's really not about sidelining the boys.
Yeah.
It is about addressing systemic barriers that do exist for girls. So if you extend that sports analogy, we're not just about sidelining someone. We want to make sure that girls are staying in their cleats and staying on the field. And there's lots of different entry points to that field. That's really the goal. When you look at who's making up boardrooms, who's leading companies, and as you said, at what level in that managerial rise, you start to see that winnowing of women in those roles. Some of that is systemic barrier. And if we can get rid of that sooner and we can encourage girls to talk about it and find mentors and see how they navigated these things, that truly is important and it's needed. And then we will be able to have the boys as allies and all of those other things which we really want. So I don't look at it so much as excluding the boys. I just look at making sure that that playing field is level and all the lights are on it for the girls to get on it.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And that's beautifully said. Beautifully said, because it is not about us and them, which I think in some cases we have swung the pendulum. It's about just making sure that girls are able to equalize the playing field. Yeah. And yeah, that's awesome. So I'm just looking at our time, Illana. So what would you like our audience to walk away with today? Like, what do you want them to go out and do after they've heard this conversation?
Come find us. We are everywhere at Etre Girls. It's ETRE Girls on social media, our website, etregirls.com. There are a million ways to get a girl in your world involved. Whether she participates in our next book, does a TED Ed talk, starts a club at her school, joins us in the boardroom. Any of those ways, we can't wait. And the other thing is, Etre is extremely girl-driven. And I didn't say this earlier. We don't visit any company that the girls haven't voted to visit. I do not pick the company. The girls run the show. We have two boards. We have an executive board that's made up of women and girls. And then we have an advisory board that is over 100 middle and high school age girls. And I am not joking when I say they run the show. They are telling us who they want to meet, what industries they want to see, what companies they want to visit. So a lot of our best ideas have come from the girls. So if there's a girl in your world and you're listening to this and you say, oh, she has another idea. She has a great product collaboration she wants to run by you. She has another idea. Find us. Bring it.
I love it.
Because that truly is how we've grown, and everything we do is for the girls.
Love it. Love it. Well, and you're also, sorry, I could go on and on about this, but you're also, that's a very different leadership style, right? And that's really where globally we're slowly shifting into this shared leadership. And so I love that you're teaching them this at a very young age. It's not about, top down approach. It's very much a collaborative, collective way.
And they're teaching me. I am listening to my board.
Love it. That's fantastic. Wow. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been my energy just went, woo.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Well, it's great having you here. And thank you so much for the work you're doing. I love that, this is such a focus. I wish my daughter had gotten involved in something like that at a much younger age, because I think, especially where we are today with social media and how it can isolate us sometimes. This is such an important initiative to really help young women rise to their full potential. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
No, thank you.
Yeah. So our audience, thank you for being here. My ask of you today is share this episode. If you have people in your life that have daughters, you heard from age even 10 to 25, share this episode with them, because this may spark some curiosity. It may help them realize that they're not feeling the way they're feeling all by themselves. There's lots of young women who are feeling this way. And so give them that inspiration to start a club, join a club, be part of the future of, how we get our seat at that table, or we change the table altogether. And I also want to thank you for being here. On the Will Empowered website, that's www.wilenpowered.com. You can find 2 wonderful video series that are free. So one is on habits and one is about overcoming fear. So a little bit of what Illana and I've talked about, I think that would be a great place for you to start today as well. So share that with your young women in your life. And thank you again for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you at the next Will Talk podcast. Thanks, everyone. Illana, thank you so much.
Thanks again.